What is going on, everybody? It's your boy Gsluke here with a Thursday night football preview for the game between the Raiders and the Rams. Another divisional matchup, a lot of meaningful games coming down the stretch, but Thursday night, probably not going to be one of those meaningful games. I mean, unless there's an absolute miracle from the Raiders, they're probably not making it to the postseason. And on the other side, you've got the dumpster fire that is the LA Rams, which if you think it looks ugly right now, just wait until, 1-2 years from now when all of these draft picks that they gave up really and truly catches up to them. So they're in a bind at this point. I wouldn't want to be a Rams fan, but hey, they still got a game here on Thursday. It's only a 6-point spread at this point, so I don't know. I've seen crazier things happen. The Rams could pull it out. I'm definitely on the Raiders side. We'll talk through all of that, but in this video specifically, going to break down everything you need to know about this Thursday night football matchup from the fantasy side for Showdown on Draftkings. We'll talk through some of the injuries, some of the question marks that are still up in the air. We'll go through game scripts, some of my top plays, value picks at the bottom of the board, punts at $200, which there's actually quite a few of them there this week. Everything you need to know to start making some of those lineups and hopefully to cash out in those GPPs. So without further ado, a lot we need to talk about. Let's go ahead and get this thing started. All right, we've got our projections on the screen. And the last time I checked, the game total here was 43.5. It's bumped down a little bit. It was at 44 at one point. I've seen it hovering around 43.5. But there's been a lot of movement because there's a lot of question marks. John Wolford, probably the biggest question mark. He's still questionable, has been limited in practice all week. Josh Jacobs is still technically questionable, probably going to play. But if any or all of these players end up missing the game, I mean, the game total is going to go down drastically. You could see the Rams become slightly smaller underdogs than the 6-point underdogs that they are right now. Skowronek just shed his Q tag, so it's still technically there on the injury report, but he's going to be playing here this weekend. Just a little bit of moving parts that we have to consider here. So that's why you've seen the movement. But the Raiders are firmly the favorites here, right? 6-point spread as of right now, and that is honestly probably not enough. I mean, we got the word that Aaron Donald is going to be sitting for the Rams. We know that Josh Jacobs, when healthy, is just going to decimate this defense, which has, not been able to stop a leak this year, whether it's through the air or on the ground. And then offensively, they're really starting to get into a groove. The Raiders are 4-0 over the last month. They've been getting it done both on the ground and through the air. And though this is a trap spot, all divisional games are at this time of year, all of the metrics point to this being a game where the Raiders are rolling, but unfortunately, you're going to have to pay for him, right? Davante is 12-8. You're paying 12-4 for Josh Jacobs. I mean, just the last Monday Night Football slate, right? The most expensive player was like a mid-10K range. Now you're paying over 12K for these sort of players. Derek Carr's 10K. And then all of these Rams players, right? Like 88 for John Wolford. If it ends up being Bryce Perkins at quarterback, he's only $6,000, right? And, still with that Q tag there, that's definitely a possibility. 6,200 for Higbee. They're just begging you to play these Rams players. So, I mean, even when you're taking a Rams heavy stack, you're going to probably get at least 2 players from the Rams in your lineup, if not 3 of them, just because of the way that pricing is. And if you want to play both a Adams and a Jacobs, you're certainly going to have to take a few shots on the LA side. So it's I would say appropriately priced board. The guys that should be priced up are and really, I'm going to be taking the heavy approach on these overpriced players. You might put overpriced in quotes because if they weren't overpriced, if you're talking about a $10,000 Jacobs, a $10,000 Adams, they would be 40% owned at captain. Everyone would be playing them, and honestly, even at their steep price tags, I think they're those sort of players, especially a Jacobs, without a Aaron Donald out there, he could run for 200 plus yards, and that would not surprise me. And like I said, I think the 6-point spread is probably even a little bit too small. I'd put it at closer to a true 10-point spread, like 9.5, which we hardly ever see in the NFL, right? These are professional teams. They're going to play to the end. They're playing for contracts for their livelihood going forward. But the talent gap here, and particularly with, the injury to Aaron Donald, the fact that I think Josh Jacobs is going to play might be without their, backup quarterback, Josh Wolford there. They're going to be at their third stringer with a Bryce Perkins. I have to like these Raider onslaught scripts. So when I'm playing a Josh Jacobs, I'm going to be a little bit less pass heavy than when I'm playing a Davante Adams, because certainly when a Davante Adams gets there as your optimal captain, 99% of the time, a Derek Carr is also going to be optimal at the flex spot. So Those two players are kind of tied together. I mean, you're investing nearly $30,000 between an Adams at captain and a Carr, at quarterback. So that's 60% of your salary right there. So it's a huge investment. On the Jacobs side, it gives you a little bit more flexibility, right? As you could take a Jacobs, maybe match him up with a few of these mid-tier options, and maybe take a Adams or somebody like a Derek Carr, right? It'd be hard to fit in that, what is it, $23,000 price tag with both of them at the flex spot, and go out there and try and take some of these mid-tier options, which are just frankly mispriced. I mean, particularly like a Higbee at $6,200. That's, the projection is down because of the overall offensive production and overall implied point total of the Rams side. But if anybody's going to get into the end zone, it's more than likely Higbee, and he's probably going to have the at least second largest, maybe even the largest target share on that entire team. So you got to like him at $6,200. I mean, $6,400 for Jefferson is also more than viable. Cam Akers, right, $7,800. I mean, he would be a $9,000 back. He's the clear alpha male for that team at this point. If they were a remotely competitive team, he would be $95,000, maybe even $10,000. So you're getting a lot of value there. It's just you got to pick your spots wisely. And if I think that it's going to be a game dominated by the Raiders, they're probably not going to be running the ball all that much on the Rams side. So, if I was a little bit more bullish on the Rams, maybe I'd be getting there. But, the buybacks that I'm getting to are going to be a Jefferson, a Higbee, who I talked about a little bit before. Also would be a Ben Skoranek, who, again, just shed that Q tag at $4,800. All of those sort of players that get it done through the air are a lot more viable in a Raiders-heavy script when we're expecting them to be throwing the ball a little bit less, playing from behind. Heck, even the quarterback, right, going out there taking, whether it's a Wolford. They did just add Baker Mayfield. He's very unlikely to play, though. I think, if anything, it would be Perkins that steps into that role as starting quarterback. Whoever it ends up being, $6,000 for Perkins would be an absolute steal. I'm going to be getting to in bunches. So though I'm playing a lot of the, honestly only Raiders at the captain slot, or at least that's what I'm envisioning here on a Tuesday evening, I'm going to have plenty of Rams players in the flex spot. So the more top heavy you are, the more and more you're going to have to play Rams as buybacks. But there's plenty of guys on the board to get to make that sort of thing happen. So that's the top end there. In terms of these middle tier players, we talked about some of the buybacks that I like, but Matt Collins, solid for some of those Derek Carr stacks, or maybe you're using a Davante Adams at the captain. Matt Collins as that secondary wide receiver makes plenty of sense. Darren Waller shouldn't be playing this week. He is technically eligible to return this week from the IR, but all signs are that he's probably returning next week against the Ravens, I believe that they play. We got Foster Moreau here, another great stacking option, a little bit more expensive than he should be because of the game script. A lot of that is just baked into the price tag at this point. So I don't love him at captain, don't love Matt Collins at captain either, but they're okay at flex. Talked about those two LA Rams options. Bryce Perkins, backup quarterback. A few people are going to be tempted to get to Kyren Williams. He's certainly seen a target share. He's seen work out of the backfield as a wide receiver as well. Just those LA Rams running backs, I have a hard time getting to them with their lack of rushing upside. So a lot of it's game script, dependent for me. If I was a little bit heavier on the Rams side, I'd be a lot more willing to get to a Kyren Williams. I do like the Raiders defense just because of the turnover proneness of a Wolford or Bryce Perkins. Whoever ends up playing could very well throw a pick six. Talked about Skoranek there a little bit already. Hunter Renfrow, another player that could technically return from the IR this week, much like a Darren Waller, but also all signs are that he's probably not returning this week, might not be returning next week either, and we'll have to see his status going forward. He's having a little bit more trouble than a Waller with his recovery. Tutu Atwell has had a few big plays, so I actually don't hate him as a buyback. As of right now, I'm only playing a 20 max, not a 150 max contest, so I don't have the need for playing a Tutu Atwell, but if I needed an extra value tier guy, he would be at the top of that list. So certainly an okay GPP play. The larger field contests is where he brings that upside, in my opinion. Both kickers are adequate. I don't love either play, though. You've probably heard me talk about that before here on the channel. Daniel Carlson, Matt Gay, either option are both okay options, not great options though. Amir Abdullah is questionable. If he can play, I like his upside out of the backfield as a wide receiver. Or obviously, if Josh Jacobs is out, I mean, he's the smash play of all smash plays. We expect Josh Jacobs to play, but if they're going out there and killing the Rams, I don't hate playing both running backs. They'll be really quick to rest Jacobs. I mean, given his injury designation, given the fact they might be up by a few touchdowns here, I'm definitely, kind of accounting for that in my projections. Abdullah could see some extra work in the backfield to spell a Josh Jacobs, give him a little bit of rest out there. So I think that that's possible. Zamir White, exact same story. He gets targets out of the backfield every single week. He's a little bit more of a receiving back than somebody like an Abdullah. Either way, I think that in a Raiders heavy script, you really got to be considering these backup options for the Raiders. You got Keelan Cole. He's only $200. He's that one punt I was talking about, right? He's getting some ownership there, but he's projecting for 5 fantasy points at $200. If he can get us that 5 fantasy point performance, that's going to be enough for us in these large field contests. I mean, at least if it's not going to be a 50, 60 point total. And at this point, right, Vegas got it in the low 40s. We're not expecting that to happen, right? That would be a little bit of a fringe outcome. So the 5 fantasy points from a Keelan Cole, let alone if he ends up scoring a touchdown, might end up getting you there. And then Bryson Hopkins, probably the last guy I'm personally taking. He's a lot lower owned than somebody like a Keelan Cole. Gets a little bit less consistent target share. But if you've played Showdown before on DraftKings, you know that those backup tight ends get there a whole lot more often than you'd expect. Sometimes it's that 4 or 5 yard touchdown, sometimes just a few catches in the open field where you get like 3 catches for 50 yards, and those 8 fantasy points, like I mentioned, the 5 points for Keelan Cole might end up getting you there. One big play from Hopkins might end up getting you there too. So another player on the Rams side that I like getting to. Outside of that, I mean, Brandon Bolden, another running back for the Raiders. They just have so many bodies there. So, he's questionable himself. So he's not my favorite option. I'd rather get to a Zamir White or an Amir Abdullah. On the Ram side, you have Lance McCutcheon. He plays a few snaps at wide receiver. Austin Tramwell, same thing. He was targeted last week for the LA Rams team. All of these sort of guys are okay as punts. Just with the script that I'm expecting, guys like Abdullah, like a Zamir White, for example, have a much higher chance of actually getting that workload than some of these periphery wide receivers for the LA Rams side. So that's who I'm getting to, but a few interesting options down here that you could take as punts, like a Tramwell. He's probably the most interesting to me because he's still relatively low owned, and he saw last week he was targeted, right? And just one target can get you there at $600. It's intriguing in the large field contest. And like I said, I'm only playing a 20 max, so I don't have to get to some of these fringe tier options. But if I were, right, a Tramwell probably in my pool. McCutcheon, for example, probably in my pool in that circumstance. A Tutu Atwell that we talked about before. And I'm probably trying to mix in. I mean, let's see here. Probably like a Cam Akers in a 150 max sort of pool. But, depending on the quantity of lineups that you're playing, you have to make these sort of decisions. All right, fellas, that is all I got for the Thursday night football preview. Hopefully you feel a little bit more prepared to go out there and make your lineups now. But before you hop on out of here, go ahead, smash that like button if you enjoyed it. Also, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of the content in the future, whether it's the Showdown previews, main slate content, which will be a lot more prominent this month with golf in its off season. I'll have you covered. So make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of those videos when they drop. Best of luck with all of your lineups, any outright bets that you're going with here for this Thursday night football matchup. Make sure you join the Patreon if you're looking for the latest projections. On there is where you can get access to these projection sheets as they change throughout the week. As we get the injury news, you may see ownership change, projections change to reflect some of the, increased usage on certain players, maybe industry sentiment is coming around on a player, and, we want to adjust our ownership projections to account for that. That is what I do on the Patreon, on those projection sheets. So make sure to check that on out if you're looking for even more direct access to my process. But like I said, best of luck. I'll catch you guys next time. And let's take down a GPP or two, huh?